Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I edit fantasy and science fiction book videos. So, editing time here. Unfortunately, Joe's camera has a few issues in this video, which is why you may see some flickering, and the camera itself kind of dies whole hog, unfortunately, near the end of the video. So hopefully you can enjoy this. The audio is absolutely perfect, there's no issues with that. But just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to look at Joe's lovely face to see what the emotions at play while he's talking about his characters, unfortunately at some points that isn't going to be possible. Hope you enjoy the interview, and I will speak to you soon. Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review, and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today I am discussing some of my favourite indie science fiction books with the author of the Hybrid Helix, JCM Berne.
Sam, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
very exciting.
I have been wanting to have you on the channel literally since last year, but I have like a mini rule where I'm like, I don't want to invite people on the channel until I've read their books.
That's not typical. And it's very funny to notice how many people don't have that rule and the consequences thereof. Because I do the same thing on my channel. I've been doing a small number of interviews. I'm like, I've got to read at least one of the books before I interview anyone. And it slows your pace. Yeah. Then I see someone doing like 3 a week, and I'm like, how do you do that? Oh, they don't read the books. Oh, okay. It makes a lot of sense. Like, it's all coming together now. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really happy you read all the books. It's like I feel like you went through like one a month, and I was like, oh, it's another review coming up. It's kind of neat. That's also, I'm not sure that's a medically approved concentration of puns for a human to ingest, because it's a lot of bad jokes happening in a short period of your life. I'm like, some people will binge this series, and I'm like, I'm a little worried about you. Are you okay? Like, thank you, but are you okay? It's that two-sided response. Anyway.
Well, I was kind of I've been trading off.
Show the books.
Oh yeah, you should. That one's upside down. There we go.
Hold them up. I should hold them up. There we go. Sunday.
The Return of the Griffin is one that I got a paperback of for Christmas from my brother-in-law, which is nice. Sweet. Did you hear the story? That I didn't realize there was a shark on the cover. That I just thought it was a blue cover.
Yes, you're not the first. You're not the first. So the funny thing is my this is the not for resale version. I didn't even pick this up on purpose. It's almost the same thing, but that's partial function, not the Hybrid Helix. So the shark thing came. I had the idea, and once I had the idea, I couldn't do anything else with the book. My wife is terrified of sharks, so I can't let like Return of the Griffin be out and visible anywhere in the house. So like at one point I was like, I really wanted posters of all the covers to like put like full size. I love the covers, and I spent enough on them that I can make posters of them. And I realized that my wife wouldn't allow, like, because this is a shared space. I'm like, this is never going to work. So I can't have a poster. Maybe I'll do the other 3 or something, and just skip Return of the Griffin. It's like, shh. No one noticed that book 2 isn't on the wall behind me. But I love those covers. Yeah, with Return of the Griffin, like so Chris, my artist, he hasn't read the book. He doesn't read the books, right? He's an artist. That's his thing. And you pay him, and he makes a cover, right? So sometimes there's a giant shark chasing the guy, and he's like, oh, so it's like funny, it's like comedic or goofy, and I'm like, no, the shark is dead serious, right? These sharks are not meant to be. If you're laughing at the sharks, someone has done something wrong with this book. I've written it wrong, or you're reading it wrong. I don't know, but they're not meant to be comedic in any way. And he's like, oh, it's like seriously a giant shark walking around? I'm like, yes, it's totally serious. And it sounds really crazy. And then I think people who read the book are usually, that's not the part that, if they don't like something about the book, that's not the part that really bugs them. But it's still convincing him that I was like dead serious about the shark, and that it needed to be dead serious and not like some funny cartoony shark. And he's like, oh, okay. And then the cover was fantastic. And I was like, okay, you got it. You got what I was saying. You didn't start there, but you got there. So
I think my favorite cover is probably Wistful Ascending. Just like, I think it's like the purity of the cover, and like him being in front of this, Rohan being in front of this Wistful.
I got so much negative feedback on that cover over the years.
Really?
That it's hard for me to say. Many people have disliked that cover. They think so. There's some there's something people assume about the series based on the covers and the blurbs that misleads them, and I can't put my finger. This is not a complaint, right? I'm not upset at their readers, but I can't quite put my finger on it because I don't know how to explain like what it's not, so they don't. I get so many reviews. This surprised me. This wasn't what I was looking for. This wasn't what I was expecting. I mean, positive things, right? They're like, "Oh, we liked it, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be." And I'm like, "Why not?" Like, what misled you? Because I tried to convey exactly what it was. I wasn't trying to mislead anybody, but somehow something about it. I think people assume it's going to be like more YA or more juvenile, maybe really more juvenile specifically, right? Or more goofy, which it's not really goofy, like, or silly. Or there are silly moments, but the tone overall isn't silly. Whatever it is, I don't know. I mean, it's fine. I'm not upset about it. I mean, but I spent a lot of time trying to figure out like, what have I done wrong in my marketing? But I had a lot of people dislike that cover when it was making the rounds for Spiffbo 8, which is when I first started getting sort of traction in the online community. So Spiffbo 8 came out. I got some of the YouTubers to read it because it had been out already at that point for like a year and a half. But that's when I started getting like people reviewing it, and I got a lot of negative feedback on the cover. I was like, I don't know, I still like it. It's better than the old cover. There's a previous cover which is much worse. It was like there's all these graphic design mills in like Czechoslovakia where you give them $300 and they make a cover for you. I think they turn out some really good ones here and there, but then most of them are
not worth $300.
Yeah, well, they are, but they're not worth more. But they're pedestrian. They're just. I'll fill the brief. I will make a cover that matches your brief, so you can't really complain. But it's not inspired either. So it's okay, I get it. It's fine. But then I got the Chris's cover, and I was like, okay, this is different. And there's a model did I tell you this?
No.
Because Chris uses a photo reference, right? So he actually does a photo shoot with a guy who's a model, who's an actor and model, an Indian dude who was who's been on TV. So my wife knows of the actor because she watched a show he was in. His name is totally escaping me, and he followed me on Instagram, and I was like, it made my whole like week. So I'm like, this is the actual Rohan, like this is the guy who they take pictures of so they can make these covers, so Chris can make the covers, and he's a real person. And my wife, he was on Master of None. Aziz Ansari. Do you know Aziz Ansari?
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. So he was in it. He was the buff guy in Master of None. Like he was not the main character, but but a real character. My wife was like, "Oh, I know that guy." Like, yeah. I forgot his name, Gerald something. He's on my Instagram. It was really funny. But so I know the real life Rohan. I mean, I don't know him. Like we haven't met. We've exchanged brief like thumbs ups on Instagram kind of thing, which is close enough. It was very cool.
He's sending him the next cover, like, hey, preview, this is what you're doing. You're fighting a dinosaur in space.
I got the sketch for the cover to book 5 2 days ago. So because the book is ready, it's kind of been ready. So the cover's the reason it's not out yet. So I have to do one more final read through, because I go through 2 rounds of editing. So I send it to my editor, she sends it back, I go through everything, I make some changes, send it back to her, she does another round, and usually then everything I do after that is just creating typos that will never be fixed, because any change I make, right, will never, like, there's no third round of editing, right? So she should be the last person to touch the text, but I'm terrible. I can't not tweak some things on the final read through. So as soon as I do that, the text will be ready. And then I have to get the cover and then do all the other administrative stuff, which is like an afternoon's worth of crap, like apply for a copyright and format the thing, and I should write the acknowledgements, which I should have done like 3 months ago, but I've been bad anyway. Oh, good. And then the book can come out, because I'm kind of eager to. It's been a long time, and I'm eager to have people. It's fun because you get a different experience when you read a 5-book series. You have different responses than any standalone. Right? 'Cause people are like, oh, I saw this coming. Oh, this turn I liked, or this turn I didn't like. You don't have that with one book.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't have this. So it's always extra fun for me to release a new book.
Yeah, I really like. One of the big motivations. I was like, obviously, got to finish the series so I can have my interview with Joe. But then I also really want to be able to read the next one when it comes out. I was like, that's the plan. I was like, That was my goal.
That's cool.
As soon as you had if you'd announced a release date, I'd be like, oh shit, I need to catch up. But luckily,
You went through them really fast. They're not super long, but I try to make them easy reads. Like that's high on my list of things to accomplish. Like not have a lot of dead space where you're reading like 4 or 5 chapters and you're like, okay, and you feel yourself slow down, like, and you're getting bored. I don't like that as a reader. So early versions of Return of the Griffin had this really badly because I didn't understand why they were happening. So like in earlier versions, it was so I had a friend, an old friend. He like beta read, and he beta read by putting it on his tablet, and he used a pen to write on the PDF, and he just wrote in the top of every page like 7 pages since a battle, 8 pages since every page, and I'm like, okay, I get it. And it wasn't actually like fights that were the problem, but the pacing was off. Like he was right. Like he was right that there was a problem. I don't know if it was specifically not enough violence, but it was a pacing problem. And I finally figured out what I was doing wrong, and I mostly fixed it. I didn't quite get everything in that book, but yeah. So I try to make them quick reads.
Yeah, I like beach read. I read almost all of my books on that sofa.
Nice.
But yeah, I really liked Wistful's ending, and then Return of the Griffin was really interesting because obviously you put us in space, and you're like, these are all the space characters. This is what's going on in space, and you're like, not for a book. We're going home, which I really enjoyed. And then I liked when we came back with Blood Reunion, you'd like missed the characters from book 1, and I feel like Blood Reunion was where you really nailed it. In terms of like, that was the one where I was like, this is a great, like, this is, I have no issues here. I'm just having a great time. Not that there were massive issues with the first 2 books, but with that third one. Although I hate the one thing I don't like is that you stopped doing the flash forward at the beginning, because I know you said people hated it.
About those. People hated it, and it's really hard to write. It's really hard to write because you've got to the whole plot has to be constrained so that you can introduce this menace at the beginning that you don't see in the middle. Right? It has to just appear kind of a surprise at the end, and that requires a very narrow kind of type of plot. So, and also the reason I did it in Wistful Ascending, I mean, there's a very specific reason, because Wistful Ascending, for anyone who I don't know why you'd be watching this if you haven't read it, but if you have. So, you start off, it's a little bit slow, right? It's like he's sort of on the station, and he's like having it's more slice of life at the beginning of the book, and then things ramp up. But I wanted to be clear that this is not a slice of life book. It's not a cozy, right? There's violence in this. There's action in this.
Yeah.
So what I did is I took action from the end and stuck it in the very beginning. So I'm establishing the genre. It's the promises and payoffs that Brandon Sanderson always talks about. Is you tell people right at the beginning what kind of book they're in for. And if I just started with him having coffee on the deck for a long time and like chatting with people, you get the wrong image of what the rest of the book is about, and you don't want to lie to readers. So but I also didn't want to start the book much later. I wanted to start where I wanted to start. Like the whole plot kind of rested on starting with the wormhole opening, but it wasn't a cozy scene, but it was too cozy. So so that's why I had to do it there. And then I liked it. I liked the structure. It was kind of fun in the challenge, but it was a lot of it. I don't know how I could have done that with Shadow of Hyperion, because you really don't want to see the ending.
No,
I guess you could have. Anyway, I left it behind.
Yeah.
So
I as soon as you told me that people hated it, I was like, I can see why people might dislike this.
A lot of people did.
I just really like it. Like I liked it as the like cold open for a TV show, and then 23 hours earlier sort of thing. Like it added a bit of tension, I thought, to the book.
It's really common in media. It's not really common in books, but it's really common in media. So I was surprised at the negative feedback. People like, I hate this kind of thing, and I'm like, I've had people DNF on the prologue. They're like, oh, I read the prologue. I never read books where this is the structure, and I'm like, really? Like that seems. I mean, you're allowed to have whatever constraints you want on what you read, right? Like, okay, I'm not your boss, but that seems like a weird hill to die on. That this is what you'll never like. You want to not read like sexual assault, fine, I get that, right? But to not read like a cold open, like I don't know, but I did have people DNF on that alone, and I was like, I don't really need This Is the Hill I need to die on either. So,
I think the cold open action scene in Shadow of Hyperion was really strong, because you go straight into that, like, oh, there is some stuff happening. But like you say, you couldn't have done that with Wistful Ascending with the way you wanted to pitch it.
Yeah. Well, the action scenes in like Blood Reunion and Shadow of Hyperion and Eyes of Empire, I start off with them so that also it's a little bit of a like, you do something to remind everyone this is what we're these are the characters, and sorry. Okay. Anyway,
no worries.
Back to where I was.
So
Eyes of Empire it's turn 5. Book 6 is Suppression of Powers. All the titles mean several things, at least 2 things. All the titles have multiple interpretations. That's my thing. That's another constraint. I like having lots of constraints. So Eyes of Empire is done, and it's all the books. That's the other thing I do that's completely like sort of a hack, I guess, is that all the books are 6 months apart. And it's like, why are these things happening exactly 6 months apart? There's no actual explanation for it. Like, I could never justify it to someone who's really like, that's kind of too convenient. Like, yes, it is. It's too convenient, absolutely. But there's no other way for me to keep track of what the heck is happening, except just to arbitrarily say the major events happen 6 months later for no reason. Like, it's no particular reason it has to be 6 months. Like, first 2 books could have been 5 months, 7 months apart. Doesn't make, but I'll just say they're always 6. So I'm like, when did this happen? Oh, it was exactly 2.5 years ago because it was 5 books. So it's just a cheat. It's a total cheat. But so Eyes of Empire 6 months.
There's some lore there. I reckon there's some lore you can build. Like, oh, this curse on the hybrids always happens every 6 months.
It's like the ultimate cheat was like Robert Jordan in the Tavern. Like, why is everything happening around these people? Oh, well, they have a mystical quality that makes fate revolve around them. Okay. All right. Well, then, all right. That's nothing you can say to that, right? Like, sure, because otherwise it doesn't really, like, why are they at the center of all this crap? Like, well, yeah, they have this mystical quality, all right. I like that. Like, don't get me wrong. I like it because it's like, instead of just pretending it makes sense, it's like, let's hang a hat on it.
Yeah, it's not contrivance. It's like, no, it's Taviran. And like, people can see it. And like, it's like when Perrin because I just read Lord of Chaos, book 6, my first time through, and I like when Perrin's like, well, I'm feeling pulled back to Rand, and I was like, well done, Robert. He's nailed this. Yeah. There's a lot of good things in that. I kind of crap on a little bit. I couldn't get past. I didn't get to book 6. I think I died at. Because I was reading them as they came out. And when they came out, I read them, and I would reread all of them. So when book 3 came out, I reread 1, 2, and I read 3. When book 4 came out, I reread 1, 2, 3, and I read 4. And then I was like, I can't do this. Because as we get to book like 7 or 8, it's going to kill me. So I'm going to wait until book 10 is out and the series is finished, and I'm going to read the whole thing. And then book 10 came out, or 12, I guess, and then I didn't read it. And then I finally got to it like a year ago, and I was like, I don't have time to make it through this series. Like, there's not enough interesting things happening per like 50 pages. I got to the end of book 2 and I'm like, this is too slow. I have too many other things I've got to do. Because there's so many books there's so many books I want to read and so many I kind of have to read. So like my friends' books, or there are books that I want to read because like someone invites me on their channel to talk about the new Dresden or something, which is I like doing. I'm not complaining, but the TBR is there, and I don't have time to just read all day. I have to write, and I have a job, and I have kids. And my kids aren't like yours, right? My kids are significantly older. I don't know if I'd be doing all this if I had kids in your age bracket. Need a lot more. You need a lot more work. Definitely.
But my youngest is 16, so it's a little different. He doesn't need much from me. He doesn't want much from me. So.
And he's embarrassed about the cool books that you're writing.
He's not embarrassed, but I don't think he cares. He's definitely in that. He's not impressed. He pretends to be. He's good in that way, right? He's like, Dad, you released another book. That's really cool. I'm like, you don't really care, Max. Like, I know, but it's nice of you to like kind of pretend a little bit, right? Thank you for that. Thank you for the little stroke. It's good. My daughter really just doesn't. She's like, oh, what? She doesn't care at all. She's 20. She's just. So yeah, so Eyes of Empire is and if you follow the pattern, another wormhole has to get opened, and there's cat people. That's all I'll tell people. There's cat people in this one. You'll know from the cover that there's cat people. I like cat people. I've always liked cat people. I didn't have any in the books until now. I like cat people since there's a comic called Dreadstar, and one of the main characters in Dread, Jim Starlin. Jim Starlin's the guy who invented like Thanos. And did a lot of the early work on like Warlock. I mean, the cosmic Marvel stuff was all Jim Starlin. And like the Infinity Gauntlet, that's Jim Starlin back in the 70s. And I loved his stuff. And once he left Marvel, he was in that age when those guys were coming off and doing their own thing, that the independent comic movement was kind of happening. Jim Starlin came out with this comic called Dreadstar, which actually started with Marvel, and Marvel had like a premium magazine called Epic. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. You might know this, or I don't know. But Dreadstar was really cool. Guy in space fighting a rebellion against an evil empire, and he had a cat man as his like number one henchman. And it was like always a cool character. It's like I gotta put cat people in here sooner or later, and I need something for every book. Every book has to have like a thing. Like I got bears in book 1. I got like sharks in book 2, right? And then in book 3, people. I got and octopus people, and I got vampires in book 3. And then book 4 is a spoiler, and then book 5 is cat people. So,
yeah,
I guess the wedge in book 4.
Yeah, the wedge. Yeah, if you haven't read
or
Partial Function.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's very funny I remember you saying like, "Oh, you should read Partial Function before you read Shadow of Hyperion." I was like, "Oh, okay." I wasn't planning on reading that until after, like, at some later date. And then I was like, okay, I'll read it. And I read Partial Function. And then when I was reading Shadow of Hyperion, I'm like, why did he say to read Partial Function? And then I got to the section on the ring world or whatever it's called. I can't remember. Ringgate. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is why.
Like, you don't need to, right? You don't need to have read Partial Function to understand what's happening, but like it's like a tie. I feel like it ties together. And I wrote them in that order. I didn't release them in that order, but I did write them in that order. There was something delayed the Partial Function release. Like I didn't get the cover in time, or I didn't get the editing in time. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. But something delayed it. But I wanted it to come out first because I wanted to lay that groundwork where there's like, and then you read, exactly what you experience is what I wanted people to experience. You get to that part of Shut Up and you're like, oh, this is the same. Oh, that's the same stuff, right? Oh, okay. This is all vaguely connected. So that was a little Easter egg. My other thing, the Grim Dwarf, has nothing to do with any of it. It's totally different world. So that does not tie in.
Yeah. So the Grim
that's just a side thing.
Yeah, that's the only thing of yours that I've not really touched yet.
So I am going to release those first 25 chapters that were in the magazine as a compilation at some point. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm not sure I want to sell it because I feel like it's going to detract from my sort of picture of what I'm doing. So I might just give it away like as a freebie to people who. I don't know. I think I may wait for some more feedback on how much. I think it's pretty good, but it's hard for me to say. It's a labor of love. It's a character that's very closely related to a character that I wrote when I first wrote books, like in the 90s. So this is another iteration that's very closely related to that character. So it felt like coming home for me, but it's a little different story style, a little different, just a little, just slightly darker. Some cuss words, not a lot, but some. I don't do a ton of that in Hybrid Helix, so it's not grimdark. There's some grim things happen, but it's not. The overall tone is not. Yeah, I'm not giving Michael Fletcher a run for his money, or Joe Abercrombie, or. So I'm looking forward to releasing book 5, Cat People, and takes place
6 months,
mostly around Wistful. 6 months after. Yeah. You always know it's always going. And book 6, which I'm writing right now, is 6 months after that. But this is the book where you start to get I think you're going to start to get a sense for what the long-term plan is.
Because I feel like we got some hints of that in Blood Reunion. I feel like that was where you first started to really sow the seeds. So I think we had. I'm sure. I think I said it in the review that I was like, "Oh, there's something going on with Wistful. Like, there's something going on with her specifically. And then we get more hints of that, obviously, very strongly in Blood Reunion. And then in Shadow of Hyperion, the other station wants a battleship, which I thought was very funny. I thought that was a good like ongoing story that was kind of a joke, but probably is leading us somewhere. And yeah, so I feel like I've got a little bit of a hint of what's going on. And I liked the idea that you have of the space between like hyperspace gates. Because you see, like, most sci-fi, it's like warp drives or whatever. But when you see the hyperspace gate stuff, like in Guardians of the Galaxy, they have the, like, hexagonal-shaped space gate stuff. And, like, and I was like, oh, that's really good. Like, just being like, well, everyone takes the gates, so no one knows what's between the gates. It's such a cool concept.
It's not just... It's between the stars. There's stuff just between the stars, which is actually mentioned in Wistful Ascending. There's a throwaway line that looks like a throwaway line, or he's talking to Wei Li. It's like, well, can their spirits jump from body to another solar system? And she's like, no, there's stuff in between the stars that they can't mess with. And that's it. It's not mentioned again. He doesn't say what stuff. Like, no one asks, no one brings it up. But it was like, and I'm like, I look back and I'm like, oh, I did have this idea back then. Like, I knew it was back, what was in there. But, it's all, you got to have, well, you don't have to. Like, if you read Wistful Ascending, I feel like I could have done a Monster of the Week. Like, he's on the station and something comes and he's got to stop it, and then he has coffee. And you could have kind of cranked those out. Like, a different thing shows up at the station from a, whatever. And it just wasn't the kind of series I wanted to write, I guess. I wanted something that more feels like it builds and changes. I want to change. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with series where nothing changes. Like, I'm a big fan of, like, Jack Reacher and Conan, like, those are great. Like, but that what I really like is where there's these, like Dresden. I really like the building and building up of power, and not necessarily in a progression fantasy, although I like that too. Like, I like Cradle, quite a bit. You've read Cradle, I think.
I read book one, and I read book two, and I started book two, and I DNF'd it because I didn't think it was. I thought it was quite boring, but I know I need to go back to it.
No. Like, Cradle's a little boring, but it's a really good example of a progression fantasy, and I think progression fantasy in general is interesting, and I just think the main character in Cradle is kind of a blah. Like, I think Lyndon has no personality, which is why I really enjoy Cradle because of that progression element. Yeah. But I don't really like the character particularly very much. So I can totally see if someone doesn't like Cradle, I'm like, don't. But it's for many people, it's their first progression fantasy. That's it hit a lot of people who I don't think had read a lot. A lot of people hadn't read a lot of progression fantasy. I know it more from illegally translated comics. I read a lot of, like, manga and Chinese comics that were illegally translated because they weren't available in English. So fans would translate. It's called the scanlation, right? They would scan the comic and just white out the words and put in the English. And I read a lot of that stuff. So I had read more progression fantasy before a lot of American readers had. And Cradle's it's a very clear example of a progression fantasy. Like, it hits the notes of a progression fantasy perfectly. And a lot of the character types, people are like, this is an amazing character. And I'm like, yes, it is an amazing character who I have seen 50 times before. Because it's not new. He didn't invent that. He just put it all together relatively nicely. But I'm not. There might be others that are much better. I haven't read widely in the genre, but it's just a good example of it. Or an example of it. So, but I like that. I like when things change and they grow and they gain power and they make progress towards a goal. I love Dresden for that. Yeah,
I would say Dresden's the biggest analogy for Hybrid Helix. It's very clear that you're a fan, not just in the way that Rohan is as a person, but also I think the structure of the stories and how you can feel. Because with the early Dresden books, you could have almost said they were one and done Monster of the Week. But there's just a few things that hang over from book to book, and those things that hang over from book to book end up building to being the main story from, like, changes onwards.
No, I absolutely stole like the structure, and I don't know if I stole the tone of Dresden. I think my tone of my books is very similar to Dresden, not the same, but very similar. I don't know if I stole it from him or if he and I both stole it from similar sources that preceded him. Because if you talk to Jim Butcher, and I've seen many of his interviews, we're influenced by many of the same earlier properties. So my tone is influenced by that. Because I was writing with this tone in the late 90s before I read Stormfront, right? Before I read Butcher. So I think we just both have this Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Babylon 5. We just take from the same places. It's all, it's all connected. But yeah, no, I mean, in my first blurb for Wistful Setting, it's like Harry Dresden in space.
Yeah.
I think that it's not the perfect comp, but it's pretty close. Like, the difference is Harry's a detective, right? Harry's looking for trouble, and Rohan is not.
Yeah.
Right? Rohan is not hanging up a shingle saying, if you've got a problem, you come see me. He's saying, I don't want anything to do with this. Right? I'm going to go and do my manual labor job and and listen to music and just chill and be very happy with that. And I don't want any trouble. Right. And then it comes, of course it has to, because otherwise it wouldn't be much of a series. But yeah, I was hugely influenced by, I was hugely influenced by so many things. Like that's the other difference is Harry's not that, Harry's not the retired gunslinger archetype.
Yeah.
Right? Harry's not the guy who used to be tough and now he's like on the downslope. And Rohan kind of is.
Yeah.
Or at least he used to be tough and now he's trying not to be anymore. That's not Harry Dresden. That I took from, but that's not original. Like I took that from a bazillion properties.
Yeah.
I can think of so many manga and movies that have that character. And I love that character, right? So I used it.
That character's often not the lead as well, aren't they? They're like this is the young buck, and their mentor is this guy who used to be this old general, and
that's true. The properties I'm thinking of, he is the lead, like Rurouni Kenshin, which is a manga, which I okay. Anyone watching? Yes, I know the mangaka is a pedophile. Don't read it. Don't give them any money. Whatever. Okay, I didn't know that when I read. No one did. Right? No one knew this when this was being published in this country. I'm sorry. Like, don't be offended. That's a whole different discussion. But Kenshin, Himura Kenshin, great character where he's like, have you read Ken? Okay. So he's like a former like assassin during like the wars between like the shogunate and the emperor, the emperor's imperial loyalists at the end of the like 19th century in Japan. This was battles that really happened. So he was like, soaked in blood, killed 1,000 men. And then he's like, and now the war is over, and he's like, I'm not killing anybody ever again. He takes his sword, he like flips it so the dull side is on the outside, and the sharp part is on the inside. He's like, we'll never kill again. And part of the annoying thing is I'm like, he takes it to an extreme, which I never wanted Rohan to be like, I'll never kill again. No, he'll kill if he has. He's just trying to cut back on the murder. That's what I'd say about Rohan. Rohan's trying to cut back. He's not trying to go on a murder like it's not a ketogenic diet of murder. It's just like a zone diet of murder, right? Just less lower the body count.
He's counting his calories. He's not cutting out food groups.
Groups. He's not fasting. He's just on a little restriction. Like, let's have fewer mass deaths at my hands for a while. Like, let's try that. See how it works.
Rohan also reminds me of Jack Knight from Starman, the James Robinson Starman that was in the 90s. I don't know if you read that. I have
not read those. I have the collection right behind me.
It's great. That's probably what in my head was like, oh, that's what's triggered my thought process, was me seeing it behind you earlier. Yeah, I really like that series. I read it I got into comics when Ultimate Spider-Man came out. The first issue of that was like the first issue of comics I bought as a teenager. So it was hard to get comics in the UK back then. And then as digital became a thing through scans and illegal comics, in the like as I was at university, that was when I was like sitting at my desk and reading hundreds of comics on a monitor. And that was where I read all of Starman, and like all the 90s stuff was the stuff that I was reading up on.
I read a lot of manga that way. A lot. Like Berserk. I read all of Berserk that way. A lot of stuff that wasn't for sale here, or it was in a very much more expensive form. You couldn't just buy a volume for $10 or $15. You had to get the individual issues, which was not a good price proposition in the 90s. But yeah, no, I bought this because Sadir Samir's like, you got to read Starman. So I bought it like, and this was like a year ago, and I still haven't read it. But I will one of these days. I'll get to it. I don't know.
Jack's
on the TBR.
He's a reluctant hero, which is why I think Rohan vibes a lot with him. I like one of the fun things about Jack is that he's like, well, I'm not going to go on patrol. Like, if the city's in danger, I'll save the city. But otherwise, I have a shop to run. Like, I have a life.
Yeah. I'm not going to go looking for the muggers or whatever.
Yeah.
Go on patrol. Yeah. You're not going to see Rohan going on patrol.
No.
Looking for trouble, right? It's like,
Wei Li will
you can call
kick
me.
his ass.
yeah, right. If I wanted you on security, you'd be on security. I'd have offered you a job.
And she's
she says that to him.
Yeah, she's my favorite character. I'm sure I've mentioned it in the reviews, but Wei Li is my favorite character.
There's a lot of her in book 6.
Ooh, excellent. She's like the foil. I feel like she's like the best friend foil. Like,
yeah. So she's there for a few. I mean, she's a few reasons, right? She's the super sarcastic semi-mentor. Like, that's just a fun character. We've all seen that before. Like, totally vicious. Doesn't give any, doesn't take any crap. I also I wanted a female character where they are just friends, right? Like there's no, and I remember, I think it was my narrator. He started reading. It's like, oh, is there going to be a romance between Rohan and Wei Li? And I'm like, no, no, he's a mammal. Like, she's not interested in him. I'm trying to make it as clear. It's like, she's not protesting because she's really into him. Like, no. She's not into him. Like, there are people like that, right? You don't want to mate with everybody, right? So I really wanted them to be just friends, but have her be female, and that leads to different kinds of jokes. And her sarcasm is always fun to write, like the very edgy sarcasm, and then I've got to use her more as the series goes on. I have a lot of stuff that's going to happen with her in book 6. Stuff that I didn't necessarily even have planned from the beginning. And the other fun part, it's always fun having an empath.
Yeah.
Because it's you're lying to yourself. No, I'm not. Yeah, I actually know that you're lying. Like, I can actually see it, right? Like, I'm not, And then I wanted an empath where, you like Deanna Troi, right, on Star Trek, was always like an empath, but then she really was soft and like caring, and, oh, you poor thing. And I'm like, I think an empath would be like, yeah, you're hurting, so's everybody else. Suck it up, Buttercup. Like, the other end of that, like, yeah, I know you're in pain, but I know they're in pain, and that guy's in pain, and that girl's in pain, right? Like you're not special. So the other end of it, instead of saying everybody's so special because I can feel your emotions, it's like, I can feel everybody's emotions. You're not special, right? Like the other interpretation of the same underlying idea. So I had fun with that, and still do.
Are you saying you didn't have the Wei Li stuff from book 6 planned? So have you got like a rough outline, or are you like, these are the plot points I want to hit, and I just have fun along the way?
Yeah, it's. I have I know how I want the series to end. I know what I want to happen in the very big picture, but I don't even have a book by book sense of like where the story is going to take place or what the problem of the month is going to be. I don't work like. I feel like really doing justice. Like, I kind of feel like it makes more sense to like write the books. I plan them a couple books, 1 or 2 books ahead. So as I'm writing a book, I'm usually getting a really good idea what the next book's going to be, and I know generally speaking the arc that I want to push overall. I know like the general line of how different things are going to change, but I feel like if I tried to pin it down, I'd have to take 2 years out and do that. And why not just write the books? And because if you write the books and this is like a 10-year project, by just letting the 10 years happen, I'm going to have better ideas about book 18 5 years from now than if I tried to this month carefully plan out book 18. Like that just it just like for me, these things just take time. Like I'll be in the shower and I'll have a cool idea for a thing. It takes a lot of those shower moments to make a good book. Right. And I can't just shower 5 times a day because the water here is expensive and, you know, I start pruning up and my wife is like, why are you in the shower again? You can't do that. And I have a job. So I know the general arc of how I want everything to go. I know how I want to generally speak in the characters, but there's still decisions I haven't made. I'm still not 100% sure on how the romantic thing is going to play out long term. I have a couple different ideas on how to do that and I haven't picked one. And I haven't even said those are the only ideas that I'll entertain, right? Like the romance in book 1 that had to be the way it was. That was like an ode to Bollywood. But then, like, does he end up with her? Or does he? Because Tamara Lynch is like she represents his dream of a peaceful life. She's not part of saving the world. Like she's like, I got a kid to raise and I got a day job and like, right, like. So that's his fantasy, is to be able to. So does that mean he can does that mean that in order to save the world, he's got to give that up? I don't want to. That also seems trite, right? So this, I'll have to figure it out. But I don't have to figure it out today.
Yeah, and the hybrids can't have kids, right? So she's already got a kid. That means that he gets to have that father-son relationship.
Yeah, and I haven't done a lot with that. I think they had more of an uncle nephew relationship in book 1. They didn't really have a father son relationship. And later on, I don't know what I'm going to do. I keep meaning to bring Rinth in more, and I don't find organic ways to do it. He was in Blood of Reunion. He was in Shadow of Hyperion a little bit.
Yeah.
He wasn't in Blood of Reunion much, and he's not in the next couple. He may show up in book 6, but not as a main plot. Part of it is. And I can feel myself doing it. I want someone to threaten Rinth and Tamara to get Rohan to do something violent. And then I don't want to ever use that.
Yeah.
Right? I keep running into these plot points. I'm like, oh, they could threaten the kid. And I'm like, nope. I swore I wasn't going to do that. Because it's like such a trope and it annoys me so much. And I've always said the kid will never be in danger. The dog will live, all that stuff. Not that there's a dog in these books, but not yet. One of these days.
Void's shadow, is she the dog?
She's more the kid. That's more the father-son relationship or the father-daughter relationship. He's raising Void's shadow in a way he's not raising Rinth.
Yeah.
Like he's the closest she has to a dad, and they do have very parent-child interactions. And it's never the A plot. Right, of the books, but it is in there, this whole he wants to encourage her to have autonomy, but she's looking for structure and he doesn't necessarily want to be that. There's a dynamic there that I enjoy playing with, and that's much more to me of a parent-child or wannabe parent or wannabe child kind of thing going on. But yeah, there's gonna have to be more. Yeah, definitely. She's more the kid.
I liked that Rohan sacrifices his relationship with Tamara Lynch in book 1 for the ex-husband, and then you find out the ex-husband's an idiot. Like, that was a very good turn. I remember reading that in Shadow of Hyperion and being like, "Oh, this guy's an idiot, right?" Just a very principled idiot.
There's something inherently like amusing about the ex who's that much of a moron or that much of a jerk, and because you can just feel this it's like you don't have to feel guilty about hating them, because they deserve it. So you want to hate the ex, you can hate, because I think I don't want to overstate it, but I think it's sort of normal to have some tiny bit of antipathy towards like your partner's ex, this sort of sense of, it's this small sense of rivalry. I don't want to overstate it, like tiny, right? But this way you can hate the ex and it's like completely justified because he's a turd, not like abusive, not like you want to kill him, but you want to punch him, right? Does that Because if he was actually evil, that would be a whole different.
Agreed.
Like if he was abusive, right? That would be a whole different thing. Then it's like Roland's got to kill him or something. I don't want to go there. Like that's not the kind of story I want to tell. But just have him be kind of a jerk. Like just and so he's going to show up in book 6. Pretty sure. I have a plot line for him. It's not all worked out yet, but I'm still writing it. But that was fun. He was fun. I think he surprised me how much he was in Shadow of Hyperion, how much I utilized that.
Yeah, he was in a lot of the book. I was expecting it to be like a short subplot, but he kept coming back.
I needed him because I wanted that tension between Tamara and Rohan, where she was gonna, I'm gonna say lowercase b betray him, or not exactly b, but I wanted her to show some agency and sort of use him to do something, and I need to really justify her doing that because it's not her nature. Like, but I wanted to show that she is capable of that she is from a family of like politicians and connivers and very rich people. She's been trained to act in this world and to use people, and that's a little bit of an arc for her. I feel like I don't give her enough character development. Like she's sort of the girlfriend, and that's all she is. And I feel like I need to give her a little more, and it's hard because there's only so much I can do I can only have so many pages.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, but I also don't like to have too many women characters who are too flat.
Yeah.
Right. They're just there to be the girlfriend, and it's like, you don't want, but she's a support. She's a support for him in an important way, I think, in Shadow of Hyperion. And then in book 5, she's on and then in book 5, I totally cheated. I was like, she's on vacation. She's not in the book. Literally, the beginning of the book, she's like, oh, she's away. She's visiting her family. She'll be gone for 2 weeks. It's like, that's it. She's not in the book. So I get to just not feel bad that she doesn't have an arc because she's not there to have an arc. She could be undergoing, intense development somewhere else. You don't know because she's not there. And then in book 6, we'll see more of her.
It's time for the Tamara Linth novella, political intrigue on her home planet. Fantastic author.
I can just imagine, like she goes there and there's like a war happening, and she manages to like buy the right stock to like totally devastate the economy of this one country and like save like 1 billion people. Meanwhile, her father thinks she's just on a beach, like being like a play bunny, and then like she just wraps up her suitcases and goes home, and no one knows it was her. Like, have you haven't read Malazan, have you? There's this Okay, so there's a character who kind of does that, where he basically manipulates stock markets to create massive change in the world, and everyone thinks he's just like, and he sleeps on a roof in like a loincloth and like doesn't seem to have any money or anything, but he's doing all these moves, and it's like I could have her do a thing like that. But will I ever write that story? I don't know. I haven't written anything in the Hybrid Helix that isn't like Rohan's POV. So it's all been his POV, which I kind of like in a way, because then whenever anyone says like, but what about this? And like, well, Rohan's an unreliable narrator and everything you've read is from his point of view. So what do you think? And it's like, it's my out for all kinds of inconsistencies and stuff. Everyone finds one. I'm like, well, he jokes around a lot, and he lies because he's lied on page. He admits that he lies, right? So you want to take his word for everything? You can, but should you?
So Joe's back now after some slight camera trouble. However, what I thought I would do is ask you a couple of quick questions to kind of round off. So I was wondering, we know what's next for the Hybrid Helix, but are you reading anything right now, or have you read anything recently you'd recommend to fans of your books?
Yeah, I'm reading Tower of God, which is a manhwa. If you get the Webtoons app for your phone, you can read like the first 300 chapters or something for free. And it is fantastic storytelling, and it's going to be a huge influence on the second 10 books of the Hybrid Helix. And one day I'll explain that whole connection, but it won't be until like book 15 comes out. So I'm reading Tower of God. I just finished R. Verity's first binding, which I really liked. I interviewed him on my channel, but I mean, it was a very enjoyable book. He doesn't like it when So he has a complicated relationship with people saying this, but he decolonizes Name of the Wind. He's taking Name of the Wind, which pretends to be influenced by all these things from Western like literature and Western fantasy, and he says, you know what? A lot of these stories that you're taking and they're really older. They really have they're really based in the Silk Road and in old Indian stories, because Ronnie really knows mythology. And he's like, I'm going to go directly from there. And then let's imagine we wrote Name of the Wind, but it was influenced directly from there instead of through this intermediary of Western culture. And it's, if you read it that way, it's kind of fascinating. And also just without reading it that way, it's a you know, it's a beautifully written book. Right? Ronnie has great prose in a way that, you know, I don't need that in what I read. Like I'm perfectly happy to read just like straightforward, clear writing. That's what I write. I don't think of my writing as particularly like lyrical, but Ronnie's is really lyrical. Ronnie's good at that. So I just read that, and now I just stuck my toes into Tower of God, which I'm rereading for like the third time, because every couple years I'm like 100 chapters behind. I don't remember everything that's happening. I should really start at the beginning. It's a lot. It's a lot to read, but it's so good. So good. So Tower of God.
Cool. I'll add those to my reading list. I mean, I was already planning on reading First Binding. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to read it literally next, because I'm reading The Martian right now. But that'll be a quick read. I'm already halfway through. So it's
First Binding's a chonker.
Yeah. It's
a big book.
I'm very ahead on reviews, so I've read 4 books, I think, that I haven't reviewed yet, and I'm posting 1 review a week, so I've got actually quite a lot of leeway if I want to add in some really big books. And really my decision is between, do I read First Binding, or do I just read the next Wheel of Time and then a sci-fi and then First Binding? So they're gonna get read, but I feel like maybe I should read First Binding first so that I can do the sequel next month, because it's out on like the 13th, I think.
That sounds right. Yeah. I liked it a lot, and I just read I had MJ Kuhn on my channel, and I read Among Thieves, and I really need to read Thick as Thieves, which is the sequel. That's a duology, and it's definitely when you read Among Thieves, you want to read the next one. Those are shorter. Those are quicker reads, and they're heist style stories. So it's not the epic. It's definitely fantasy, but it has a heisty feel to it. So those are fun, quick. It's a fun, quick book, and quite good. And MJ Kuhn is a delight. So I don't know if you've seen SFF Addicts, the podcast with Adrian Gibson and MJ Kuhn. No. Oh, that's a good one. Adrian Gibson, the guy who wrote Mushroom Blues, but he was doing the show for 2 years before, which he started so he could interview writers and ask them questions that he could then use to write his book. Like, oh, how do you do this? Like, oh, taking notes, you know.
Yeah, I often think, like, because in the back of my mind, I've always thought like, oh, I will write a book someday, and I have actually planned out very basically and outlined a fantasy trilogy. Nice. And now I'm like sitting on it going like, well, I need to flesh this out. I want to flesh it out because I'm doing the opposite of what you were doing, where you're like, if I write this book, then the later books will be better. But in my mind, I'm like, I want to be able to seed things in book 1 that become intensely important in book 3. As like, that's how I want it to be, like, really interweaved, but then also to only write those 3. So like, then move on to something else. Maybe try sci-fi. Because I'm a huge sci-fi fan, but I don't really read much sci-fi, so I feel like I need to get on it and read more. I'm going to be reading The Expanse soon. More.
I love The Expanse for what it teaches us about the genre. Because The Expanse is the most perfect division of hard and soft sci-fi you'll ever read. Because they're both in it, in the same book.
Interesting.
Because the hard sci-fi in The Expanse is super hard and well done. So you know when he does the soft stuff, it's like, it's not that they don't know, like how orbital mechanics work. They showed you that they know in like the previous chapter, but then there's something violating on those orbital mechanics. It's like, okay, you're telling us something about the technology. It's really neat. Those are good books. The show is also phenomenal. The Amazon, the Expanse on Amazon was really good, and a lot quicker to watch the show than read the books. Probably.
Maybe. I don't know if it's like a 20 episode season. It probably isn't, is it? Anyway.
They're really not. They're like 7. They're good though. They're good.
Yeah. Well, I will definitely.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah, I think that my plan is to read the book and then watch season 1 of the show and like do a comparison video because people love those.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's perfect, and that's a popular franchise. So yeah, that should be great. Get some views.
I want to ask one question as well. So, who is the most challenging character to write?
Noru. Noru, and the hardest characters to write are the characters who don't speak standard English. And the Ursins can be tough too because you have to be really consistent with their non-standard if I have a character, because not all the characters are great. Like I never felt like I did enough with like his girlfriend in book 2 or Amber. I always feel that Amber is never quite as interesting as I want her to be. So I'm not saying all my characters are fantastic. I feel that there's weaknesses there, but like when the speech is really off, Noru was based on a short story I wrote set in the universe, which is like my reader magnet, and I tried to create my own version of English that's like the way Nigerians speak English. If you watch like a Nollywood movie, there's really different. You can understand everything, but like the word choices are really different. Like if they want snacks, they'll say something like I forgot the expression. There's all these expressions in it that like they're words so you can make out what they mean, but they're not the way you or I would say things. And then it adds this layer to it where it's different by class, because like the richer you are, the better educated you are, the more your English approaches British English. But then the poor people in a Nollywood movie will mix in words from the tribal languages because they're not as well educated. It's like the maids will talk different than the owner of the house, right? And they express all that through the word choices in the movie. Right? So you watch the movie and like it all means something. It tells you something about who these people are based on how like all the sentence structure and everything. And I tried to do that, but make up my own, and that was hard. It did not work. Or it kind of worked, but like I know I made mistakes, and I still make mistakes with the Ursins because they don't speak. They speak a non-standard grammatical structure because they're the only characters really on Wistful who didn't grow up speaking Drachna. Because it's like the imperial. It's like the English of the galaxy, right? Like they've colonized everyone. Everyone speaks their language, so everyone speaks their language, right? Everyone is great. People may not be the one they speak most, but everyone grows up speaking it, except for the Ursins who came from somewhere else. So they have broken grammar, and I always feel like, am I breaking it the same way every time? I don't think I am. I think I'm doing something.
I've never noticed it personally, so I feel like if you're breaking it, you're getting away with it.
I have an editor. I think she helps me catch those mistakes. But other than that, I don't really have too much trouble. I generally get a gist of who I want each person to be, and then I just write them. And I don't have. So the actual like getting the sentences right, it can be tricky. But again, with those characters. But other than that, I know what kind of jokes each person's going to say, and if I do it wrong, I can feel it. I'll read it and I'll be like, this person shouldn't have said this joke. This joke should have been said by someone else in the room, or shouldn't have been made at all. And that's how I can tell. So yeah, Noru's the hardest, which is why I don't have her very much. She's in Blood Reunion, and then I was like, I just can't. I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing her justice, and I know it. And I like the character. She was fun, but her dialect was so hard. And I did it to myself. I have no one to blame but me. I had this great idea, my own like Nigerian version, my own dialect of English, and I was like, no, creating a dialect's not, that's not easy.
Yeah. J.R.R. Tolkien had like a doctorate or whatever.
Yeah, but he's a linguist, and I'm really not. Like I go by ear. I don't even know like the words for all the grammatical structures I was torturing when I wrote her. So anyway,
cool.
Yeah, that's my answer. Thank you, Sam.
Excellent. Yeah, I did have a couple more questions, but I think actually, honestly, we went through all of them.
Okay, good.
So let's wrap it up. If you can pitch to everyone, what should they do if they've enjoyed this video and they've not read any of your books or anything like that? What's the first step?
Probably
Kindle
best step is to
Unlimited, Wistful Ascending.
Kindle Unlimited, Wistful Ascending. That's what I would do. And or if you can find it, go to JCM Berne, subscribe to my newsletter, and I'll send you a link, or email me, or hit me up on Twitter, and I'll send you a link to Zero Twist, which is a 15,000 words free short story. And if you hate it, you probably can stop there. And it's not a great short story, but it gives you a pretty good sense of like the kind of stuff I'm writing and the kind of humor I have, more or less. But if you have Kindle Unlimited, yeah, read Wistful Ascending. I think that's the right place to start. And then if you like it, there's plenty more.
And then we got Partial Function is kind of a different type of story. Is there a sequel to Partial Function coming? I really wrote Partial
Function to be a standalone, and then after I wrote it, quite a bit after, I had an idea for how to write 2 more. So one of these days I might write 2 more, but not more. Like I really think I can wrap up what I want to say with those characters in a total of a trilogy. But it's not really a trilogy. Like the book ends and it's done, right? But there's always more that can happen, right? There's always more events in the world. So I really came up with an idea for 2 more in that series, but I don't know if I'll write them or when. I don't have a plan. It's possible I'll have time this fall. I may do it like towards the end of the year and release it. I really wrote Partial Function just to get into Spiffbo. I mean, that was why I wrote that book. I wanted a fantasy novel to put in Spiffbo, and then I got eliminated in the coin toss, so it's not in Spiffbo. And I was like, broke my heart. So and it hasn't been selling very much. So to be honest, like that's the other side. Like if I can write another Hybrid Helix novel or a sequel to Partial Function, financially speaking,
time,
yeah. So I'm sure I'll write it eventually, and I have other projects. I mean, I want to write more Grimdwarf, which is a little easier to write because it's a little more episodic. And then I have another thing which is it's kind of like Stargate meets Sin City, and it's like a crime teenage drama thing that that like leapt into my brain, wholly formed almost. And I wrote the first 5 chapters, and I was like, am I onto something with this, or is this really bad? And I sent it to all my friends, and they're like, you got to finish this. So pretty much everyone said that. So I was like, okay, I should finish this. So I'll get to that. I also am not going to probably never put out 3 Hybrid Helixes in a year. So if I write 2 a year and then I still have time, I'm going to write something else. And then whether I release it for free or try to sell it for, a small amount, I don't want to plan myself out 5 years in advance. That's just silly. Right? You have to kind of give yourself room to come up with a really cool idea. Do something with it. Right? I don't have a publisher. Right? This is the self-pub thing, right? There's no Tor editor saying you need to come out with 2 more books in this series next year, right? No one at Tor knows my name, so, right? I can do whatever I want. If I come up with an idea for a Christmas story, I can write it and put it out for free in a week, which is what I did in December for the Rohan Meets Santa Claus. Like I had the idea, I wrote the story, and I just put it out there. I made a cover in Canva, and it was done. And it was like a total of like a week. Like having the idea to like having it in people's hands. You can do that when you're self-pub. You can't do that when you work for Tor or Orbit or whatever. So,
well, I think that's a great place to leave the chat. So as Joe says, make sure you try out Wistful Ascending, try out Zero Twist, and I will definitely be highly anticipating book 5, and look forward to talking to you then when it comes out.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And if you're watching this video and thinking, wow, what a great video, you should go down to the comments. And if you've got questions to ask Joe or me, or if you've got other stuff to recommend or just want to chat about the things we chat about, then absolutely do so. And when you're on your way to the comment box, there's a like button that you can hit and a subscribe button if you haven't already. And there you go. Both people on this call, one of them runs the channel, the other one is subscribed, so obviously it's fantastic. 100% hit rate. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.